He looks wonderful. Postmodernist. We are ready, but we want to make sure that the people that is attending the ceremony here can also be broadcast outside. So we are just checking that.
Okay, everybody. Okay, hello, everybody. We will begin the next session with Buro Happold. The moderator is Eduardo Moreno, who you heard from earlier today. I should mention to our colleagues on Buro Happold is that we have a nice audience here in person. I will rotate this camera so you can see, but we also have a fantastic audience virtually. With that being said, Eduardo, I will turn it over to you to lead the next portion of this session. Please, Eduardo, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Alex. Good morning again to all of you that are here. And of course, good morning to our colleagues from Brent Cross Town. And let me start by saying that the pavilion aims to do three main things. One is knowledge, and this is the idea of a knowledge exchange hub, and the discussion will be centered around that. But it strongly connects, and I'm sure also Brent Cross has that, innovations, different forms of innovation, social, institutional, technological, and the third one, urban solutions. And I'm also sure your intervention will some form present what kind of innovations and solutions you are presenting. For us, for the pavilion, it's critical that knowledge connects to policies, to actions. And we would like to hear from you, what are these ingredients of success? There is a hand covering somewhere there. Which are the ingredients of success and how your program has contributed to this through the Flourishing Index baseline that you are going to present. And I'm going to introduce the first speaker, which is Mr. Nick Searle. He's the joint manager, partner Argent and partner related Argent. Nick joined Argent in 2007 and became joint manager partner in 2020 alongside Robert Evans. He's also one of the related Argent partners. He has spent more than 10 years working on King's Cross, where his main priority was leading the commercial team. Nick now jointly leads related Argent 10 million square feet Brent Cross Town development in North London. And this is what we would like to hear about. He's an architect and he's member of the RIBA for over 30 years. We are very honored, Nick, to have you here in this wonderful setting that you have. Nick, please, the floor is yours. I would appreciate if you can talk around 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Eduardo. I will do that. I'm just going to share my screen. I have got colleagues who are going to join and talk about specific parts of this. So just, is that now sharing properly for everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So just to say who we are, I work for related Argent, and Argent with the developers of King's Cross in London. That's what most people know Argent for. And our related Argent business is a business that's set up with related from New York, but it is a UK business. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Brent Cross Town is all about. Yogita is then going to speak briefly about Barnet Council, the location where this is. And then we have Jamie and James who are going to talk specifically to the Flourishing Index, which is what we want to really explain a bit more to you about. But I think you need to understand the context of the whole project first. So when we first got involved in 2015, we were brought together to be a partner with Barnet Council, and that's really important part of what we're doing here. These were the ambitions that the council had set for us as we came and joined them. They had a very, very clear idea in their own mind about what this huge development in their borough should be for, and this sets it out. It is a public-private partnership that we are involved in. It is a huge scheme of over 10 million square feet. And the fact that it is a public-private partnership actually helps us in terms of building a true legacy for the council and for the City of London. It's very different from if they had just sold land to us. We are actually together in a joint economic partnership. So Brent Cross Town sits about on a train journey about 12 minutes outside of central London. It's in northwest London. It's an area that historically hasn't had large-scale commercial development previously. So what we're doing is quite unique in this part of London. Very importantly, there is a new railway station that is coming to the development. It's called Brent Cross West. This is the entrance that will be there that's already been constructed. And that will give you a 12-minute journey via this brand new station straight into the centre of town. These are the statistics for what the development is all about. You can see it's large scale. We're creating workspace of 25,000 people, almost 7,000 new homes. But it is so much more than statistics. The core values that underpin this are around social connectivity, environmental sustainability, and health and wellness. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about what that means and how we've set it out. So in putting this development forward, we have made 4 pledges. The first, that it will be the place in London for sport and play. Secondly, a town where all can flourish. Thirdly, a net zero carbon town. And fourthly, to drive greater connections. And those are the 4 pledges that we really hang the whole development on. I'm going to start with the first one. And the reason that we have chosen this is our development. And the main development area is to the north. If you can see my cursor, it's the area to the top of this page, is to the north of this green area. But this green space is part of our development area. And we have the opportunity to build new play and sports facilities on there. So we're building traditional sports facilities, challenger and social sports. The idea that we will bring people of all ages, all generations, all cultures together to enjoy those fields in a really, really practical way, where we're promoting female participation at the forefront of that. The second area is around making a town where all can flourish. Now, that can be determined a little bit of marketing spin if you want it to be. And that's why we have created the Flourishing Index, which is what my colleagues are going to speak to you in more detail about in a moment. But as the developer, the reason that we did this is we wanted to put science behind the word flourishing and to actually talk about the real measures we are taking and how we are actually using a development like this to improve people's lives. So that's something that Jamie and James will talk about. For us, at the heart of it is creating a town centre that people actually want to come and visit and use on a regular basis. And that's really what it's all about. We're creating a new high street in London. Now, people often talk about the death of the high street in this country. I don't agree with that, but we've given ourselves the challenge of building a new one from scratch. And when we do that, we think about ground floor experience. We think about how people move. We think about how they feel. We think about what they hear as well as what they see. And so one particularly unique aspect of what we're doing here on this giant development is we're putting in a music and sound strategy that thinks about the sounds that people hear, not just the things that people touch and the things that people see. And that takes many different angles from both external and internal with the buildings. Thirdly, we are focused on net zero carbon. I think that's a really important part of what we're all hopefully now doing as we bring forward large developments like this. We know how much property adds to the carbon impact on the globe. Our first area of attack, if you like, in this is the embodied carbon. We're looking at actually what we're building our buildings out of. And the area where we can make the most difference is across 3 million square feet of office development, where we are looking to use timber in that construction as much as possible. We have all timber buildings, and then we have buildings that are combined timber with other materials. We're also focused on operational energy. We are working with one of Europe's most foremost energy services companies, Vattenfall, who are owned by the Swedish government. We're creating a vast energy centre and heating and cooling network. We have the largest air-cooled heat pump in Europe, currently being constructed here on the site. So both embodied carbon and operational carbon, but also then looking at how do we actually facilitate low carbon lives for the people who live here. There's a whole presentation on that in its own, so I won't go into all the details. But fundamentally, we want to reduce the number of vehicle movements around the development, particularly private vehicles. So our target is that 80% of the journeys that take place at Brent Cross Town will be done either on foot, on bike, or on public transport. And we have to enable that and many other aspects in order to be successful. And finally, we want to drive connections. And driving connectivity isn't just about trains and buses. It's about community connections. It's about digital connections. And a really important part of it is actually connections beyond our boundaries. So at the moment, we have a development that's bounded by roads and railways. We need to create the safe connections across those so that people can move into and out of our development into the other communities safely, securely, and pleasantly. This just to give you a sense of it, this is where we are now on site. In the top right-hand side, you can see those green playing fields. Right in front of you is the new railway station that's under construction. And then the area of the construction work, which is here, is the first phase of buildings. They're mostly residential buildings with some office buildings down by the station. In the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a new park. This is the new park, which we have already built and opened ahead of the buildings to make sure that people understand what that direction of travel is in terms of the quality of the environment that we are trying to create. We have built a mass timber pavilion. This is the pavilion where visitors come, where we have marketing material, but also we do a lot of community events. So again, we are showcasing what is possible from low carbon construction perspective. And finally, I just wanted to finish on this rather beautiful object. We're bringing a cultural identity to this place as well. This is actually an electrical substation that we opened about 3 months ago. And rather than building a nasty grey box around it, we built a beautiful piece of public art, which sits at the bottom of the main motorway that comes from Northern England into London. So this is basically the moment you enter central London now. You see this, it's 51 metres long, 21 metres high. And it talks about the cultural as well as the social identity that we're trying to create in this place. So I'm going to stop now. That's a very, very fast summary of a very large, complex project that we're undertaking. I'm going to stop sharing it. And Yogita, I think you'd like to talk a little bit just about Barnet's ambitions here.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Nick. I think Jamie's going to share the screen for me.
Yeah, Yogita, 1 second.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jamie.
Can you see that okay?
Before you start, Yogita, let me please introduce you.
Sorry, Eduardo. Yes, please do.
It's important for the people that are hearing you to know what you are doing. Yogita Popat is the Assistant Director for Sustainability at Barnet Council. Barnet Council is the second largest borough in London, for all of us to know. She's very experienced senior manager with over 16 years of professional experience in research and data, and trying to connect all this to decision making. She's responsible for delivering the council ambitions, particularly with the net zero council that Nick was referring to. And this should happen in 2030, but not later than 2042. Obviously, for that to happen, and I think Yogita is going to explain this to us, the involvement of communities, resident business is at the heart of their plans. We would like to hear more from Barnet Zero, please. The floor is yours, Yogita.
Thank you, Eduardo. So yes, I'm Yogita. I'm the Assistant Director for Sustainability at Barnet. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking through what our journey looks like and a bit about the borough. And so that really puts the context of our partnership into, it puts our partnership into context. So Jamie, can I just ask you to share the next slide, please? Okay, so our borough, we've got a wonderful place to live and to work in, but we have massive ambitions to make it even better. We've got a new vision for Barnet, one that puts caring for our people, our places and the planet at the heart of everything we do. So that really, really holds and resonates to what Nick was talking about, and how the Brent Cross Town and the Flourishing Index really links to the work we're doing. So let me tell you a bit about Barnet. Barnet is situated in the north of London. It is the second largest borough in terms of population and size. So we have over 380,000 residents that live in our borough, which is 155 individual households. We have 26,000 businesses that are there, and each of those businesses, or well, the majority of those businesses, I think it's about 96% of those businesses are small or medium. So they're very like small businesses and micro businesses with less than 5 people employed. And we have over 1,000 charities. So where Nick was talking about the community and bringing them together, there's about 1,000 of those. And our new corporate plan is very much looking at how we engage effectively with those communities and making sure residents are at the heart of everything we do. A third of our borough is covered by parks and green spaces, making it really challenging to put in some infrastructure, but also great opportunities in terms of our biodiversity and green spaces. We have an eclectic population with 25% of our population who are under 19, so giving us real opportunities to change our outset for generations to come. But we've also got a very high population of over 75, making our care population quite difficult and challenging. In terms of our space, because of the size of our borough, we produce almost 1.76 million tonnes of carbon every single year from the energy just from homes and transport. So huge challenges. We've set ourselves, Jamie, next slide, please. We've set ourselves a wonderful target to become one of London's most sustainable boroughs. And the reason we've decided to become one of London's most sustainable boroughs is that we recognise that we can't do it alone. So the partnerships we have in terms of Brent Cross Town, as well as other local authorities, means that we're all kind of going towards the same commitments. We've got a commitment to become a net zero council by 2030. So that means our own operations and our procurement and all the work that we do inside our own council buildings. But as a borough, we have a target to become net zero as soon as possible after 2030, but no later than 2042. A target that was brought forward by 8 years in the last 12 months when we declared a climate and biodiversity emergency. So how are we going to do that? Jamie, next slide. We're going to be looking at our housings and buildings. So the 15,000 houses that Barnet Council has direct influence, we've developed a pathway to getting that to net zero. But we also have 140,000 households that we have to support and enable to get there. Transport is a big one for Barnet. So Brent Cross Town and the new train station that's been developed there is a way to get our transport journeys to net zero, and also the active travel within the borough and how do we support that. The infrastructure in Barnet means that getting from north to south is really easy, but east to west is really hard. Our ambitions around renewable energy and the work we've got with Vattenfall really plays into that, but we're looking at how we can make that bigger. Waste is a big one, so sustainable consumption, not only in the waste that we produce, but the things we buy and the food we eat. Business and skills, we've talked about that. We've got 26,000 businesses. And whilst that's a challenge about supporting those small businesses, it gives us huge opportunities about getting the right businesses into our boroughs and partnering with local universities to do that. And then the natural environment. If a third of our borough is green spaces, how do we use that natural environment to support our ambitions around biodiversity and green spaces? And then our partnerships. So the work we're doing with Nick and Jamie on the Flourishing Index really helps us to achieve what's coming out our residents' perception survey and our joint strategic needs assessments. So really putting the social and economic sustainability goals at the heart of what we do, as well as our environment. That is a whistle-stop tour, and I know Jamie's going to start talking about the Flourishing Index. On the next slide is a link to our website, and also if you'd like to get in touch for more details. But I'm going to let Jamie talk about flourishing and how that really links to our goals in terms of becoming a net zero borough.
Thank you very much, Yogita. We can see here in this presentation two things that I would like, before giving the floor to Jamie. Please, Jamie, 1 minute. I think we are doing well with time, because there are two questions that are interesting that I would like to refer to you and Nick. What I can see in this presentation is a very thoughtful idea of looking inside the neighborhood, the town, to the playing fields, to the inclusive community, to the design of the spaces, but at the same time looking outside the community and the town to the connection and to the net zero carbon, which is both internal and external, and the use of technology, but also of design. A question from the Secretary General of Urban Economy Forum, I think it was to Nick, but any of you can respond. If you can tell us the building materials, to which percentage they contribute to CO2 emissions reduction. And also from Gustav, how, although you, to some extent, Yogita, you presented this with the different sectors that you interact, how you contribute to net zero lifestyle. So 1 minute maximum each, Nick and then Yogita, in that order. Thank you.
Nick,
Well,
you want to go first?
I don't have specific, the question was around what are the percentages of materials?
No, which is the percentage that you were speaking, the building materials, the use of wood and timber, etc. If the net carbon reduction, which percentage account this kind of technology solutions?
Okay, so I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to give you a technical answer to that. We are working at the moment where we are trying to get from a steady state CO2 per meter cubed of about 800 down to about 350, 400. So we are trying to reduce by about 50% across all of our office buildings. And in some cases where we can use all timber, which is generally on the smaller buildings, we can do better than that. And where we're having to do hybrid buildings, where we're combining with concrete and steel, then clearly it's not as good as that. In terms of concrete, we are actually, because of the scale of the development, we have put our own batching plant onto the estate, so we can create concrete on the estate and reduce the embodied carbon in that through the reduced vehicle movements. So it's just we're working as hard as we can to use as much of the low carbon material, i.e. timber, as we can.
Thank you very much. Yogita.
Eduardo, remind me of the question around communities and residents.
Yes, the question is more on how lifestyle for net zero is achieved.
Okay, so we're very much early on our journey for that. We've just launched a citizens assembly where we're working with residents across the borough to identify how we can become more sustainable together now and in the future. And we're very much near the end of that. We've probably got another month or so while the citizens of Barnet, who are a representative of the demographics across the borough, are helping us design that. Our Barnet Zero campaign is a campaign by the community, for the community, recognising that we need to do this together. So that's really about embedding sustainability in everything we do. And then the other bit that will probably answer the question in the chat is around how we look at behaviours and attitudes to sustainability and make sure we're making decisions that are equitable for everyone. So we're working with a local university to really understand what some of those barriers to sustainability might be and how we can become a net zero society. And that work is beginning, and we're just waiting for the findings of that. So we'd be happy to come back next year and show you and talk to you about some of that work, but very much on the early days of developing where we are on that journey about bringing residents with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yogita. I like a lot the word journey. That's exactly the only way transformative action of such important things like the environment, the cities can be achieved. Jamie, sorry that I knew it was your turn, but I knew also that your presentation around this important index on flourishing is going to move us a little bit to another direction. And I wanted to give space to these questions that were related to more to the presentations. Apologies for that. Jamie Anderson is a research fellow, University of Manchester, and urban wellbeing lead of Buro Happold. Jim Anderson works with this university and the Urban Institute in the urban wellbeing service offer. He has, although he looks very young, he has over 16 years professional experience in research and practice, and creating and using a strong urban well-being evidence. To tell you that in the World Urban Pavilion, the Flourishing Index, and of course the two presentations are extremely important for us to learn from you and to envision the possibility in the future of working together in many countries around the world. Jamie, the floor is yours, and please tell us more about this index, his applicability and his rationale. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. Can you hear me okay? Just checking.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So I'm going to speak for probably 10, 12 minutes, and I'm going to talk through what we mean by flourishing and our approach to measuring that interpretation of flourishing at Brent Cross Town. Then I'm going to give a handful of examples from our baseline Flourishing Index findings report. Then I'm going to hand over to James also from Manchester University, which doesn't work at Buro Happold, just me representing Buro Happold. He's going to wrap up with 5-10 minutes, kind of reflecting back, summarizing and reflecting on, what this means, but in terms of local context, but also thinking more widely in terms of international context and general context. So next slide, 1 second. So what do we mean by flourishing? So for us, this is about measuring flourishing in the literal sense. So it's about understanding how individuals and communities, how they're feeling and how they're functioning in their own words, from their own perspective, feeling really good. So positive emotions and positive functioning, life feeling like it's going well for people, and these having a combination of this, these good feelings and positive functioning is very strongly associated with improved productivity, creativity, brain function, immune function, tolerance of others, lots of utilitarian benefits, but also just good, just like what most individuals and most people and groups really value, and they, as for themselves and for others. And so unfortunately, most of us are in the middle of this bell curve where we're actually, doing just okay or just average mental health. And then some of us, too many of us, we're hovering down here in the disorders end of the spectrum, especially in terms of general disorders such as anxiety and depression. So if that's what flourishing is, then how are we going about measuring it and creating this index? So I like to borrow this quote from Sir Gus O'Donnell, who says, this is about, if you treasure something, measure it. And so that's precisely what we're trying to do, is combine measures of literal flourishing, what I was just talking about, which is self-reported experience, but using like validated and strong measures, both survey measures and interview techniques, and then also measuring proxy flourishing. So this isn't flourishing in the literal sense. This is like taking a step back and saying, what are the key causes of flourishing? And I'm not going to go through all the factors listed here, just to say that we're trying to push beyond what would normally, it was typically or traditionally measured, in regards to well-being as proxies like productivity or GDP, instead putting more emphasis or greater emphasis on things like job satisfaction that go further. So in terms of our approach, I've already said or set out how what we're trying to do is moving things on by measuring systematically people's experiences, which is a really big thing in itself. But then I'm also going to talk about three ways in which our approach has three other key aspects to it, basically three components. First of all, we're working collaboratively. So working, not just to co-produce a flourishing index, but also collect the data associated with that index. So working with Yogita and colleagues in government, so in public health as well, and in comms, working with Nick and colleagues at Argent and in industry, so social value managers, asset managers, but also really very importantly, working with the community. Really very conscious that this is quite a complex and nuanced topic, making sure that this isn't a technocratic exercise, a top-down thing. This is really very much about understanding what well-being means in people's own words, in the community, and tempering that kind of grassroots democratic voice with more of a technocratic or more of a top-down approach, and also working with academics. So at University of Manchester, we have an interdisciplinary team of statisticians, psychologists, health economists, but also drawing on the input of other academics and institutions as well from around the world. So the other key thing we're doing in terms of approach is using a mixed methods approach. So this is actually 5 different types of data collection, 5 modes. First of all, drawing on routinely collected data. So in the UK, we're really quite fortunate, and it's well placed because we have quite comprehensive national surveys of well-being in the literal sense, but also key proxies. They're not always used very well, but we have them, and we're using them, and these can have anywhere between 15,000 and 100,000 people in each wave of data collection, and that allows us to compare Brent Cross to national trends and regional trends. And then also, because the national data doesn't allow you to drill down to specific localities very well, it can, but not always that convincingly. We're also collecting bespoke local data. So this is the bulk of our data collection, and this is, as I said before, it was working with the community, doing interviews, both individual and group interviews. It's been doing lots of surveys, so 1,500 surveys, and that's a combination of intercept, so literally grabbing people in the street in public spaces, but also sharing the survey online. We do direct behavior observation, and we have something like 200,000 data points in the baseline, and that's a combination of manual tools and automated. So manually, we literally will go to a space and count and code the number of people being physically active or connecting with others or being mindful of their environment. And we also have sensors that are on lampposts that can collect the physical activity behaviors like cycling and walking. And then very importantly for the local community, we were asked to collect air pollution data at a local primary school, and we were asked we did that using proper calibrated, scientifically valid tools. So last point on approach, the key thing that what we are doing here is gathering before and after data. So as Nick alluded to before, showed us before, the Brent Cross is on the ground, it's being delivered right now, but it was really important to get before baseline data set, and then come back after repeatedly to collect data after, or as the interventions rolled out. So this is especially trying to go beyond post-occupancy evaluation. POE is of course a really important tool, but we're trying to go even beyond that and to demonstrate causality and additionality and use controls or comparison groups wherever possible. So just to wrap up, so I'm going to get into the last kind of few minutes, and I just wanted to provide a few examples of some findings from the baseline work. And wanted to start by just offering an overview, which is that the baseline report, which we'll be sharing soon in its entirety, but it is very much a mixed lot of findings. So on the one hand, negative baseline insights and things that can be turned around, and priorities for lifting things. So for local well-being, for example, job satisfaction, which I'll come back to. Then, but also positive. So there are things that are really good about this locality and the community and where they're at. So things to protect and build upon. For example, a strong sense of belonging in the area. But before I go into that, I want to show this map and talk a little bit about the people who who were part of the survey. So this, well, it was 1,500 people, and the vast majority, they either live within the development boundaries, the orange line, or within a 10 minutes kind of cycling distance of the proposed new high street. Bigger circles basically represent more people in that postcode or that location. So we managed to get a good representation spatially of the area, but also we worked hard to get a good demographic representation. So we worked hard to make sure that the people who did this survey were the right mix, a representative mix of different local ethnicities, ages, religious backgrounds, etc. So just a couple of slides on a couple of examples of findings. So positive, first of all, this is people's reported belonging. So how much they feel they belong to the local community. And this was really very positive and strong. So, almost 37% of people felt they a very strong sense of belonging, almost double that we see in England, both generally in England and a matched group as well. So really positive and something to protect going forward. I think it could partly have been affected by COVID. I think COVID potentially did bring this community and other communities together, and therefore it may have impacted. But generally, this is something really, really important to leverage as a resource, but also look out for and protect as lots of, thousands of new people come to the area, and the community have said, said to us that this is really very important to them. They want to maintain that sense of belonging. I think Barnet and Argent are already starting to do that by working with local artists and harnessing a sense of belonging, local identity, etc. But really interesting journey, as you say, Eduardo. A good word to use. So another positive finding really quickly, social support. This was on a scale of 0 to 5. This was found to be above national average, and really encouraging to hear of, and again, really important to protect and embrace with local community groups, such as in this picture, a group called the Yard Group, I think. Anyway, quickly onto a couple of negative findings. So this is job satisfaction, and as you can see, it's quite considerably lower than the national average, and it's on a scale of 0 to 7, so there's lots of room for improvement for everyone. And a great opportunity in the context of Brent Cross, where there's 20,000 or more new jobs coming. How do we ensure that not only are we creating new jobs, but high quality jobs that shift the dial on job satisfaction? And then last, we've just got this one, which this observation, this insight is not from the survey, it's actually from the observed behavior data that we collected, and we saw that basically there's a lower proportion of women and girls using the playing fields that Nick mentioned earlier, and this it was anywhere between, depending on the site, it was anywhere between 5 and 10%, and this again is something that Argent and Barnet and partners want to address. I think they already are doing with a local girls football team, Nightingales, and other things, and it's something to work with the community on going forwards to address, to get this to be more balanced. So I'm going to hand over now to James and stop sharing my slides, because I don't think you don't have slides, do you, James?
I do not, Jamie.
1 second.
Okay. Jamie, it's a wonderful presentation. I really like it. I mean, it's important because you are creating this before, after, and controlling the groups and trying to see both space-related behavior activities, how are affecting in this flourishing. There are some questions. We will keep them for the end. And I would like that James Evans, who is also professor at the University of Manchester in human geography, director of the Manchester Urban Institute, and his work explores the geographical aspect of smart cities and urban sustainability. We are really interested, James, to hear how space, geography, urban cities interact in terms of this notion of smartness. So please go ahead. You have 7 minutes max.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to an international audience. It's an honor to be here. My work focuses on how cities can transform to address sustainability goals using smart technology, new approaches, new forms of evidence. And it's been a pleasure to be involved with this project with an extremely forward-looking municipality and an extremely forward-looking corporate partner. Remind ourselves of the global context for this and maybe pose some questions, if you like, that will hopefully generate some reactions from the audience around whether this is relevant and how it might be rolled out more widely. So the first point I'd like to make, clearly we need more fine-grained understandings of how urban development shapes human outcomes. Cities remain the places where most people live, and because they're dense, they're the places that it's most effective to make a beneficial difference to people's lives. And Brent Cross is really an attempt to do this, bringing together energy, mobility, employment, quality of life, to try and transform a place, but also people's lives. The challenge, of course, here is evaluation of urban development is surprisingly rare. If you work in the public policy sector, the evaluation of public policies is completely standard, but it's remarkably rare in terms of evaluating the impacts of urban developments. So, for example, we've been undertaking large-scale urban regeneration across the global north for about 30 years. Yet there's not much of a robust evidence base about its impacts on the lives and livelihoods of residents. And this is a big oversight. The United Nations SDG 17 focuses on the need for better data, more progressive measurements of how we improve people's lives. And I think that's where flourishing might come in. And the UN Habitat's most recent cities report, and Eduardo, you'll know this much better than me, on urban health, talks about the need for more disaggregated data collection, the need for joined up approaches that can capture climate and health co-benefits, and of course the need for holistic place-based approaches. So I think this is why we're quite excited about the idea of flourishing. But as Jamie has given you some idea, it's not straightforward. When you find an evidence gap in the literature, there's always a potential explanation that the evidence gap exists because it's really hard to collect robust evidence on a particular problem. Funding for evaluation is scarce. Baselines are required, so this approach requires some upstream thinking. It really needs to be factored in at the design stage. The kinds of outcomes we're interested in, health, well-being, employability outcomes, they're long-term funding is hard to guarantee. Cities are complex multivariate environments. It's hard to identify causality. Cohort studies are tricky because people move around. The built environment is only one driver of their outcomes. So we need more bespoke data. We need more innovative, involved methodologies. And of course, the precise nature of the challenge varies between different international contexts. And we more and more realize that urban innovations need to be articulated into different places and reflect the specific characteristics of those places and needs to work. And I think that's one of the strengths of the Flourishing Index, that it's co-produced with communities, so it does reflect the needs of specific people in specific places. So finally, I think there's a big prize to be had here, understanding how urban development can improve health, well-being, outcomes, offers a huge potential way to make people's lives better. Cities are being developed, built, regenerated en masse every single day of the year. Another useful trend is more and more groups are interested in evidence about what works. Companies want to understand the success of their developments. Municipal governments want ways to align urban development with their policy goals. Communities want evidence to enable them to push for better developments. And investors want ways to unlock ESG funding for urban development. So some challenges for us. We need some way to unlock longer term funding, longer term partnerships working across private, public and academic sectors. And we need to figure out ways to streamline that data collection, co-production process if we're going to scale up these kinds of approaches. And clearly digital technology has a potentially transformative role there. And the final thing, of course, is we need more examples of how this might work in different international settings. Would this have traction in many of the other places across the world? I'll leave it there. Thank you, Eduardo.
Thank you, James. I really like it because your analysis is confronting the index to the reality of the data, the space, the connection to policies. I really appreciate. I had been working a lot in this topic. I might have some questions, but it's not my turn to ask questions. There are some from the chat, but Alex, maybe you would like to see if among those that are attending here, there are some questions they would like to ask directly to the four speakers or the last two, I don't know. Alex, could you coordinate that, or would you allow me to ask the question from the chat?
Thank you, Eduardo. I think you can hear me, yes, Eduardo?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. So I do look to the audience. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have a question.
Please, come to the microphone.
Much. My question is regarding technologies we are incorporating into the realization of smart cities and development that we are doing. How we really make sure these technologies are keeping the compatibility as we're going forward, because the process is very slow. It takes years, 5 years, 10 years, or even more to really get to digitization and incorporating all of the structure of a digital city. How you assure technology you're incorporating today is going to work for you in future? Just a very, in a nutshell, question.
Thank you. This is a very clever question. We might get one or two more from the audience. Alex? I don't know if you heard the question, because at the beginning he was not connected to the micro, but in the nutshell, it's if technology can contribute, accelerate data collection, information treatment, in the sense of having better possibilities of the Flourishing Index to connect to technological development, as I understood from my side. Alex?
Yep, there's another question. Please. Come to the stand, though, yes.
So it might be a question or a comment. Living here in Regent Park as a TCAC tenant, I joined into the committee of the UN Pavilion. It's wonderful that they have come to this community, but there's still a lot of challenges and a lot of work to do. The changes in Regent Park, as a TCAC tenant, we always had that stigma that we don't work or we don't we can advocate for ourselves. Now, having private owners is still that they listen to them more than listening to us as a TCAC tenants. So that needs to be more of a work, that our voice as a TCAC tenants count, that somebody else should not be translating for me or speaking for me. So this is a challenge. It's great, this new changes in the community in Regent Park, but there's still a lot of work to do as a TCAC tenants that, like I said before, our voices does count. It's not to listen to the other of a private owner, is to be listened as to us as a TCAC tenants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very interesting, clever question. And it's true that in the last year, it has been an important trend towards integrating the view, the preference, the sentiment, desires of people as part of development outcomes. So we would like to hear from you on that. Is Alex anyone else, or can I add one or two from the chat?
There's one more question, Eduardo, and then I think we'll set it there and we can have the responses.
Okay. Okay.
So, housing multitudes, as well as what you've spoken about today, is of course a project that will require a lot of long-term funding. And that of course speaks to the previous, speaker's conversation about equity and ownership. So realistically speaking, what sort of funding models are you thinking of in terms of funding all these pieces? And when it comes to funding as well, not just the infrastructure, but also, how do equity and jobs and ownership fit into all of that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, please, any of you take the responses. We have a time constraint. Try to be very, very focused to the point. And I would like to add one or two from the chat. One, which seems to me interesting, is flourishing the same or similar to well-being? It's a synonym. Flourishing, I see more like a process-oriented, well-being a state of something, but I would like to hear from you. My colleague Daifet from UN Habitat is saying if flourishing development, as you will be implementing policies, may have an impact in terms of housing prices, affordability, etc. We know, some of these interventions have always this caveat that they need to be controlled in terms of keeping local populations. So please, the floor is yours, whoever would like to respond.
Thank you, Eduardo. Could I start just?
Yes, Nick.
I will start by talking to the last question, if I may, around gentrification, and also pick up the voice of the community in that. Now, I think I'll let the others carry on from that. We are always asked the question about gentrification. What I can tell you is that our ambition as a developer who is in this project, we will be here for 15 to 20 years working on this. So our intention is to stay for the long term. And our intention is to reach out beyond the boundaries of our development and lift up a much wider community of people within the borough than just the people who are going to come and live and work there. The question is quite specific about the rising house prices and rental prices, and that is a challenge across the whole of London. For us, I go back to the answer, the point I made at the beginning about public-private partnership. We as a private developer cannot solve that problem on our own. We need to build new homes in London because we have a housing crisis. In the process of building new homes, we want to make them pleasant. We want to make the environment that they are in, around which, where they're situated, pleasant. If there is an inevitability that that process leads to a ripple effect on values, we have to then work with the council. We have to work with the Greater London Authority, the GLA here, the sort of the citywide authority, and ensure that we are providing appropriate affordable housing within what we're doing, but also that there is a broader delivery across the whole of the city that addresses that issue. I don't think that it can sit within the private sector alone. So we are replacing one of the first things, the very first building we are building in the whole development is replacing homes that exist on the site. So there's over 100 homes that are the very first thing that we deliver. The other first things that we are delivering are public spaces, they're parks, they're new shops, they're new facilities for an audience before any of our new residents have even arrived. So we're starting from that point. And then I just want to link it to the community and to the Flourishing Index, because the whole point of the Flourishing Index is that we create feedback loops over time, over 15 or 20 years. So everything that we hear, everything that we learn, for good or for bad, we feed back into this process, and we can learn from it and improve what we do. The council can learn from it and improve what they do. And then we can start to share that information on a London-wide basis. And we can start to make broader civic improvements across the whole city. So it's not a simple answer. It's a very, very complex answer. And the community that live there, I 100% agree with the lady who spoke, that they have to have a voice and have to be listened to. Because quite often, the voice from that local person actually brings a truth that, as developers and even as a local authority, we sometimes struggle to see. So it's really important that we have that voice input.
Thank you, Nick. We have the time in front of us, but I would like just to say that I'm very glad that you responded to this question. One of our
Eduardo, could I just come in on the back of Nick's comment, because it really does speak to what Nick was saying. So one of the things that Nick hasn't spoken about is that some of the people that are actually buying and opening businesses in our Brent Cross Town at the moment are people from the community. And it's wonderful to see that we've got local people from the community buying the spaces in the town or sort of developing. So Nick hasn't sort of mentioned that, and it's great to see, and it's through the work that we're doing with Related Argent. The other thing to note is that in terms of our wider development in Barnet, we are committed to building 1,000 affordable homes as part of our growth strategy. And partnerships like Nick's talking about are key to the delivery of this. So very much sort of working and hearing. The other thing, sort of talking to the comment that the lovely lady made just now about hearing residents' voices, our Citizens Assembly does that. So we've got 40 participants from across the borough who are very much part of our demographics. They come from all ages and ethnicities, and they're private owners, they're tenants, etc. I mean, the fact that our demographics has a 90-year-old who comes to every single assembly session to give us his views really talks to the breadth of people we're listening to. We want to be a council that is effective and engaged. So every part of our development strategy has that in it. Just making sure that we're listening to everybody in the space, not just some voices.
Thank you. Very important response. To tell you that one of our steering members committees of the pavilion is from this community, and she was very concerned that you could address this question. So I'm sure she's happy to hear that this is part of your concerns. I want, on behalf of the World Urban Pavilion, to say big thank you to 4 of you. Each one of you really contributed to give a very good perspective of the work that you are doing. And as I mentioned before, we would like to explore in the future the possibility in many parts of the world of doing some work together. Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to the people who asked questions in the chat. And Alex, we will continue.